Hey everybody, welcome to episode 72 of Into the Necrosphere. On this installment of the podcast, I am talking to the legendary Aaron Stainthorpe of My Dying Bride, and I will say without a shadow of a doubt, regardless of whether you're a fan of this band, this is one of the best episodes that I have ever done, and you are going to see why in just a couple of minutes' time. First up, just a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. If you have not done so yet, then hit the subscribe button wherever you consume this podcast from. I post new episodes every Tuesday to YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere where podcasts are consumed. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and all of those good things. If you really want to rep your love for the show in public, then head over to the Teespring store. I will post a link to that in the description of the podcast, and you can buy t-shirts, hoodies, and all sorts of other cool swag on there. Also, stick around for my review section after my interview with Aaron. I'm going to be talking today about the new Shrines and the new record by Blindfolded and Led to the Woods, which is, in my opinion, one of the best names I have heard for a band in a very, very long time. So you'll get to hear my thoughts on that, and I might even, depending on whether my internet connection gets back up and running, do some news, talk some trash, and basically look at the likes of Blabbermouth, Metal Injection, maybe Metal Storm if they manage to get their act together, and every other decent metal website so that you don't have to. On that note, let me welcome for the first time ever to the show, Mr. Aaron Stainthorpe. So first of all, welcome. Secondly, I have to ask you the same question that unfortunately I'm asking most of the guests that have been on the show for the last year. How have you been doing over the past year? How have you been coping with the many lockdowns that we're subjected to? And, how are you keeping yourself busy, with given the fact that you're off the road and, you kind of housebound like the rest of us?
I've been doing fine. I've got the window open. If you can hear anything, just let me know and I'll close the window.
No, it's fine.
I've been fine. We've been doing a lot of homeschooling, which has kept me really busy. I'm not a teacher, so when it comes to the academic side of things, it's really difficult. You don't realize how not short-tempered you can become, but how tough it must be to be a school teacher. It highlights how difficult it is to speak the English language, to learn how to speak. There's so many letters in words that we don't even pronounce.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to teach a kid how to spell these words, you're looking at them thinking, why is it spelt this way? It's obviously it's history. So the homeschooling has kept me really busy, to the point where I've not really had time to do much writing. Certainly no recording apart from a few little bits here and there. But school is back up and running now, so I now have free time to be able to indulge in things like this and other things that kind of turn me on in a creative sense. But lockdown's fine. The main stores are still open. I still get access to food and water and beer, so that's all good. I love cooking, so I'm happy to cook at home. I do miss eating out at the odd restaurant. And, My Dying Bride, our last show was September 2017. So we were kind of hoping 2020 would be the year we'd kind of come back, new album, finally get on the stage again after such a long break. And unfortunately, that was taken away from us by the pandemic. But there's nothing we can do about it, so we're not going to complain. I mean, 2020, we released a new album, a new EP, and Peaceful re-released Vinter on vinyl, which, so we had a prolific year for releases.
Yeah.
We just weren't able to back any of them up with any live shows, which was a great pity. But, I haven't gone crazy much. Put a bit of weight on. That's fine. When we start to look like we might be doing gigs, I'll hit the gym and try and run that beer belly off a little bit. But, fine, just stifled in the creative department, but that's starting to come back now. So, I've had my first vaccine jab, it's fine. And I just kind of hope that towards the end of 2021, we might see some live gigs. People seem to be talking about that now. I mean, proper live gigs as well, not these where somebody 2 meters over there, there's somebody 2 meters over there. And it's almost like, I don't know, one of those, Soviet films from back in the period when everyone was uniform. Uniform. Gigs are full of sweaty people screaming and shouting and elbowing each other in the side of the ear. That's a gig. Standing politely in your own zone is not a gig. But if the vaccines keep working the way they're supposed to work and we're not all possessed by Bill Gates, then the end of 2021 could be quite fruitful.
Yeah. And I do notice that a lot more people are starting to book shows and stuff now. I know the Damnation Festival's been booked, and there's a couple of exciting things happening there. Akakaka are doing the celebration of Goated Mendes, which I'm very excited about, and there's a few other things happening. But yeah, I feel for any artist that is in a position right now where their main revenue stream has been cut off. But the other thing, I 100% agree with you. I feel like you're better off waiting for things to open back up to where a gig can actually be a gig rather than a Xerox of a great memory. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean we've got gigs booked because they were held over from last year. So we're committed to doing them. I think the first one is in July in Romania, and I'm pretty certain we're not going to be doing that. But it's still advertised as going ahead, and I'm sort of thinking, okay, well, who am I to say it is or it isn't going ahead? And I suspect if that one does go ahead, that might have to be one of these distance ones. But because we committed to it last year, we can't say to them, "Oh, we're not coming now because we want a sweaty crowd." We would have to go and would have to do it, and it would be a bizarre experience for sure. But we've signed the contract and we'll go and do it if we have to. But it's just there'll be no atmosphere. Well, there will, but it will be terrible. So
morose.
It's weird. Roll on 2022. Surely 2022 has got to get the thumbs up for gigs.
Yeah, I would hope so. And this new law that they said was going to pass, I know it's under discussion. I don't know whether it's been formally, written into the law books yet. But where we can be fined £5,000 for leaving the country for anything other than the most essential reason up to June. It does frustrate me because you look at it and go, well, what is the point of us getting vaccines then? If half the country is vaccinated and we're bragging about how far ahead of the curve we are, why then are we in a position where nothing seems to be changing as far as our day-to-day lives are concerned?
I know that is very bizarre. We should be fine because as a band, it's our, the My Dying Bride is from the government's point of view a small business.
Yeah,
and we have business in a foreign country, so we will be allowed to go and do that. But yeah, there's going to be a point where surely they're just going to have to open the floodgates. I mean, I remember one of the politicians, I can't remember who it was, in January saying, at some point later in 2021, we're going to have to treat coronavirus just like the flu.
Yeah.
You've had a jab, but you can still get it. And that's very unfortunate. But it will never go away, so we just have to start to tolerate it. So we might end up getting a jab every year, like we get a flu jab every year. It'll be an option. If you don't take it, it's a gamble. Perhaps it's a gamble if you do take it. The side effects of injections are as long as the effects if you don't get them. Yeah. So it's hit and miss. But at some point, the government will say, you're on your own now, folks. Go and do what you used to do. I hope. Some people think this lockdown is the start of a lockdown forever. And a change in humanity. The British public won't stand for that. I mean, there was rioting in Bristol the other day about the police. And if the government try and close Britain down forever, we're just going to smash the place to pieces, hang those who are responsible and start afresh. That's how it happens. It's called a revolution. And there are way many more people who will be angry than there are police to defend. So they'll be overrun. So it's a pointless task even trying it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And again, I feel like the governments underestimate the level of anger there is from, people who have seen their businesses go, their livelihoods go, who have been affected by this, not simply just on the basis of somebody in their family getting sick or whatever the case may be, but on an existential level. Their long-term survival has been impacted by this. There's definitely there's a bubbling degree of resentment I feel building up and getting increasingly stronger.
It is, yeah, and that's why I think that at some point the government will just say, look, we've done everything we can. Sorry if we fucked it all up. But you've had your vaccines now, off you go, back to normal. Start all the pubs that closed. There's now a business opportunity for people to invest in a new pub, start a new pub. Instead of knocking a pub down, reopen it under new management. That restaurant's been closed for a year. Reopen it under new management. There will be opportunities, and I think that will happen. And I think in 5 years' time, everything will be back to normal. And there'll be people who, I don't know, think it was a huge conspiracy, and they'll be left scratching their head saying, that didn't pan out how I expected it to. And everyone else.
Bill Gates doesn't rule the world, and we haven't lost 5 billion people. Yeah,
it's just it's odd. Every time something catastrophic happens, the conspiracy people are all over it, and that's fine, because it opens a new dialogue for everyone to join in with. And some people say there's no smoke without fire, and you start to think, okay, they've got a point here. So it's worth indulging, I think, a little bit to see what's what. But it's like the classic, I can't remember. Who was that guy who predicted all the catastrophes?
Nostradamus.
Yeah. And most of them haven't really happened. And when they don't happen, the people who say they were going to happen say, oh, yeah, they got the date. Because the calendar has been changed so many times, that date when we said it was going to happen is now coming in 10 years' time. That's right. That's what's happened. Right. That's what's going to happen in 10 years' time.
Yeah. And they definitely kick the can down the road an awful lot.
Of course.
The doomsayers.
Yeah. I think in 5 years' time, we'll just look back at 2021 and just think they were shit years, but let's crack on.
Yeah. I noticed obviously the Old Earth beer can in the background, and you mentioned you My Dying Bride being prolific. You also put out your own beer, which one is awesome. I've ordered some. It's my birthday on Saturday, so I've ordered some to help celebrate the day. But how did that happen? Were you guys approached? Did you have an idea and take it to somebody? How does that sort of thing come about?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a long story. When Calvin left and we recorded The Ghost of Orion without him, Andrew did all the guitars. When we'd finished and we realized, okay, we're going to have to support this album with a tour, we need a new guitar player. So we got Neil Blanchett from a local band called Valafar, and they'd already had a beer out. And I thought that was a great idea. So I said, how did that come about? And he told me that was a local brewery here in Halifax. So, excuse me, we went down and had a chat with them and said, can you make us a beer? We didn't want a beer they've already got and just rebrand it as ours, because it's not ours then. It's just, so many other people do this. It's just, it boils my piss when people do that. So I went there, and it was great. It was a great process. I told them kind of what I was after, and it was wonderful. We spent months tasting and retasting to try and get the flavour that we thought was bang on, and we nailed it. And this all started in 2019, so we weren't predicting the pandemic. And so when, unfortunately, it came to launching the beer, we couldn't have a big party. Because at the brewery, they also have a bar outside and indeed inside. So it was going to be a great big, everyone come, whoever you are, anywhere in the world, fly into the brewery and let's all get proper drunk on a can of Old Earth. But then the pandemic struck, so we had to, that was limited to just band members and just taking photos for the social media networks. But we are going to have, when the pubs open again, we're going to have a second launch so that we can properly celebrate its arrival. Because again, the idea was back in 2019, we don't just sell it in cans in shops and in some bars. We get it in kegs and we take it to all the local bars and get them to sample it. And we've got bar runners here we've got beer mats, we got the whole thing so that we could take it to a pub and say, look, just put this on, it won't cost you anything. You've got all the paraphernalia that goes with it. But of course, the pandemic pulled the rug out from underneath us, so we weren't able to do that. So hopefully a bit later on this year, we can get the beer in the local pubs and then start, spreading and expanding, because I don't want to have to promote the beer forever.
Yeah.
I knew it would start life as a My Dying Bride piece of merchandise, and everyone would rush out to buy it who liked My Dying Bride, and then sales would tail off because it's like a T-shirt. They want that bit, and then once they've got it, they've got it. And I don't want to have to keep saying, come on, everybody, buy this My Dying Bride beer. I want it to have its own legs and to start reaching further pubs, and people start talking about it, and it, getting a bit of a name for itself, and then running by itself without me having to push it. So, but it was a great exercise, and I had a few last night, which is why that one's there. And of course I like it. I spent months testing it.
Yeah. How many different iterations of it did you go through before you kind of got decided on the one?
Oh, loads, because the brewery had never made a lager before, and I sort of I like ale, and I don't mind a porter. And I like some lagers depending on, who makes them. And I kind of wanted like a craft beer that would maybe, a bit like My Dying Bride have spanned doom and death metal. We've managed to incorporate both, and luckily enough, get away with it. And I was hoping we could create something that's a bit lagery and something that's a bit ale-y, so that the lager people would like it and the ale people would like it. So we came up with this, and they've got it down as craft brewed lager, and it's called a Vienna lager. I'm not sure what that means. And so the brewery had never done a lager before. Apparently lagers are a bit trickier to make than ales. Ales are quite easy to make, which is why there's a million microbreweries all over the country, all over the world.
All doing ale, yeah.
All doing ale, because it's dead easy to do, and it doesn't take long. Lager is a bit more technical. You need more equipment, and it takes longer to brew. And also the company had never done cans before. They'd only done bottles. Because I said to them, when this is released, there's going to be quite a lot of international interest, and it's going to be cheaper to ship cans than it is bottles. So they had to look into canning, and that was a whole new route for them. Because getting back to the tasting, when I first went down, I tasted all their beer and said, I don't want any of them. I want a brand new one.
Yeah.
And so for them, it was a learning curve. They'd never done a lager before, and now they've got all the gear and they love doing it. They're looking to do more. They've never done cans before. They've really enjoyed that process, so they're doing more things in cans. And it was just interesting. And as I say, we're going to have a second launch for it later on this year. And we've found, thankfully now, an importer in Belgium who is taking a whole load of cans, the bigger ones actually, the 440ml cans, and they will be available to our European friends who will no longer have to deal with Brexit. Because when we started selling cans before Brexit, it was fine. You just take them to the post office and you send them off. Now there's tax and there's bullshit. So it's too expensive now. People have stopped buying it because to get it outside of the UK costs a fucking fortune.
Yeah.
So we need someone in Europe. We found someone in Europe who's going to sell it for us there, because Brexit screwed us.
Yeah. And I would imagine that's had an impact. And again, you probably wouldn't have felt the brunt of it just yet, but I mean, that is going to have an impact on your ability to be able to move freely around Europe and tour, as a band. Have you kind of anticipated anything coming up? Or are you sort of preparing for anything, to do with the Brexit fallout and My Dying Bride?
Yeah, again, we have to get work visas, which we didn't need in the past. I think it's Harriet Harman, MP, is looking at getting travel work visas to cover the whole of Europe, so that a band doesn't have to get a visa for every country or however it was supposed to happen. But it's still, as it stands, when we go to do any gigs outside of Great Britain in 2021, we have to pay a lot more money for visas than we did in the past. It's ridiculous. And also in the past, you only needed a carnet for Switzerland. Now we'll need a carnet everywhere we go, which is, again, that's more expense. And it's just, we can probably scrape by, but for younger bands, they're not going to be able to afford it. So, cool little shows in small cellar bar venues, like we used to do, we'd hire a van from the local van hire place, chuck all the gear in it, climb in on top of all the gear, our drivers, straight down to the ferry port, straight across to Holland, and we'd do like Holland, Belgium and Germany in small dives, and it was great. That's what you do as a band. That's how bands start. That's going to be taken away from young bands now. There's no way they can afford to do that because Brexit screwed us. But hopefully some politicians, with the backing of Elton John, and I think Roger Daltrey's getting involved, we might be able to find a workaround, which God knows we'll need it.
Yeah. So if we talk about the last record, I know I listened to a couple of interviews that you've done, over the past few months, and also interviews leading up to that album being released. And I know it was, obviously because of the things that you had going on personally, it was a very difficult record for you to record. The one thing I was particularly interested in, you mentioned having, for a period of time, or a struggle to connect to the music, even though, it sounded great. You struggle to connect for it for various reasons, and to really kind of find your voice, if I've understood everything correctly. What was the catalyst or the event, or whatever the case may be, that kind of prompted you to find your groove again, and to kind of feel like, I guess you could be Aaron Stainthorpe of My Dying Bride and perform to the ability that I would imagine you expect of yourself on the album?
I don't think I've got there yet. That's why the album was such a struggle, because I felt like I wasn't who I used to be. And I don't think I am, I went through a life-changing event, and I don't think I'll ever be that same person again. I suppose live gigs will really test the water, but we haven't had a chance to do that. The album, I felt like a fish out of water. It was already recorded, and if there wasn't a deadline, there wasn't a deadline, what we're talking about, I knew it was done, so I knew at some point I'm going to have to contribute to it, or it's going to be an instrumental album, or they'll have to find a new singer.
Yeah, or that album that Aaron's not on, so no one listens to it. So.
But I thought, you've fallen off your bike, pick it up and get back on again. Let's see, let's get rolling again. Let's pick up where we left off and crack on. And I did, and it was hard work, but it just didn't quite feel the same. And I've still, I've said it before, I've still never listened to the album, because I don't know, it's just awkward. It feels strange and alien to me. And I don't know, I don't think I'll be myself again. So I've become a different person. So what I do from now on, it might be similar to what I've done in the past, but I don't think it's going to be the same, because I'm not the same. And I need some live shows to figure out who I am, and another recording, because the EP that we released in November was recorded in the same session as the album. So I haven't recorded for a while now. So I need some live gigs, and I need another recording experience to finally, I think, cement who I am now.
Yeah.
Because at the moment I still feel a little bit adrift. The band, Andy's just been hankering after some rehearsals this week, and I'm just not interested. I just don't feel like I want to be there. I don't know. It's just odd at the moment. Odd, but I can feel it coming back. I can feel some normality returning. I just don't feel that binding that I had before. There's only me and Andrew left as the original members in the band, and it felt, we felt like a really strong, powerful unit. And I just feel I've kind of drifted, and it's somewhere out in the fog now. But I think the fog's clearing, and I'll eventually, I hope, make full contact with it again. Some point in the future. I just don't know when, and there's no hurry, because a lot of bands, obviously, all bands have stopped performing because of the pandemic. We stopped performing 3 years before the pandemic. So when the pandemic arrived, not performing, we're already used to that. We've already had 3 years of not doing it. So we weren't banging our heads against the wall because of lockdown. we hadn't been on stage for 3 years before then. It'll be 5 years before we get back on stage. And so, I've had a long time away to think about it, and I don't know how I'll feel when I'll get back on stage. If we ever get back on stage, I don't know. We'll probably be all right, I suppose. But My Dying Bride is, for me and for everyone else in the band, is like a side project. It's like a hobby. We don't rely on money from My Dying Bride to continue our lives. We're fortunate in that way, so that, again, when the pandemic hit, touring bands who might do 100 shows a year, that's how they earn their money. That's how they pay for their flat back at home. That's how they pay for their children. That's been taken away from them, and they are skint. For My Dying Bride, that's not the case. So the pandemic hasn't had that much of an effect on us, because we all earn money from other things. My Dying Bride is a weekend and an evening thing, and that makes it enjoyable for us. It's less stressful, we don't rely on it, and we don't think, oh, the last album wasn't a hit, I've got no money. That doesn't affect us, and I think it's nice in that way, because that allows us to be as creative as possible. We don't give a damn about record sales because we don't rely on them. We create this music because we have to, because it's in our blood, it's in our body, it's in our spirit and mind. And so we write albums that are a bit weird and they don't chart very well. That's absolutely fine by us, because we don't rely on the sales, and it gives us total artistic freedom, which is fantastic.
I was just about to say, I can imagine that must be incredibly liberating, because you would never feel the pressure to have to write, a Crown of Sympathy Part 2, or anything like that. You do what comes natural to you and what you feel inspired to do at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure sometimes the record label, Peaceful in the Past and Nuclear Blast Now, probably scratch their heads a little bit and think, okay, how do we market this? And that's absolutely fine. We don't care. Well, we do care, obviously, but we pour our heart and soul into our music because we can. And we don't think, oh, that riff's a bit weird. Can we jazz it up a bit for the radio? We don't need to think along those lines. It's quite a nice position to be in. We don't rely on it, because we would have suffered really badly in the pandemic like everybody else. Fortunately, we've just glided over the top of it and carried on doing nothing.
It's interesting hearing your comments about the last record, because my one observation I did have of it, your voice has always, and you've heard this from thousands of people, but it's always been one of the main draws in My Dying Bride, because and I think one of the things that makes it that is because it's always been so soulful and so emotional, whether you're growling or whether you're singing. And the one thing that I did notice on Ghost of Orion was I felt like the emotion in your voice was dialed back quite a lot, and I always put it down to the fact that there's you kind of have multiple vocal tracks on a lot of the songs, and it felt to me like it was maybe a little bit more produced than maybe one of the earlier records. I put it down to that, but it's interesting that you say about making the connection to the music. So the question is, I don't know whether you have in the time, I guess, since the record came out, or maybe even a little bit before, whether you've listened to any of the older My Dying Bride stuff, but do you feel that same level of disconnection to any of the earlier material as well?
No, the early songs, I'm in them 100%. We did a lot more double tracking of the vocals on Ghost, because I couldn't connect properly, and because I was singing badly, because my heart wasn't in it. So I'd write the lyrics, and the lyrics somehow seemed to flow absolutely fine, because I guess because I'd write them here in solitude, if you like, and so I could really express myself properly with the lyrics. But when it came to singing them, I just couldn't get into the music. The lyrics still meant everything, and the music was amazing, but it's like putting custard on beef. You've got two things you like, but they don't necessarily work together.
Yeah.
When you put them together, it doesn't quite work. And I just couldn't get it to work. And so I wasn't trying hard enough. And so when I'd sing the lyrics, they were half-hearted. And so Mark, the engineer, was like, can we double track these to give them a little bit of some? Yeah, fine. And I like the sound. I've double tracked vocals loads of times in the past, but not all the way through. But we had to, because I was struggling, and I just couldn't deliver the goods. properly. And I know, I've seen the comments. Some of the older fans are like, the vocals aren't as good as they used to be. And of course, you get new fans with every album. They're loving it. But I'm probably not going to do the double tracking thing on the next album, because I feel, as I mentioned, I feel myself reconnecting with the band more so than I did on the last one. So I think the next album, there'll be touches of double tracking, but it'll be much more like the vocal people remember me for.
Mm-hmm. So on the topic of your voice, and I think it's particularly prudent, as I think it was last year that you guys celebrated your 30th anniversary.
That's right, yeah.
And Gothic by Paradise Lost, obviously that's just celebrated its 30th anniversary. Both of you are bands that were forging a sound at the time that no one was doing. There was no frame of reference for it. There was no scene around it. You guys just seemed to be doing whatever, came naturally to you. Your voice in particular, how did you find it? Because obviously you went from the death growls to the clean singing, and your clean singing is so distinct and, so unique. Was it something that, I guess the first question there is, what made you decide to start doing the clean singing to begin with?
Well, I was really, and still am, passionate about writing lyrics and poetry. I love words. And when we formed My Dying Bride, we were just friends, and it's like, right, he plays guitar, he plays drums. I don't play anything, so I'll do the vocals. Brilliant. Never sung a word in my life except perhaps at school. But because of the way the scene was at that time, death metal vocals were a big thing. And I thought, right, I'm not Bruce Dickinson, so I'm not getting those levels of pitch. However, look at all this death metal that we fucking love. I'm going to do a bit of that, and I'd never done that before either. So it was, it was quite a baptism the first time we'd gone into a rehearsal room. Everyone started up their gear. I'd never even held a microphone before. I didn't know where to plug it in. It was feeding back all over the place. I didn't even know there was an on and off button on the switch on the thing there. It was proper amateur idiocy. And then the guys just started whacking out some tunes, and I just went, and it was mental.
Yeah.
And I never looked back, and it was great. And it's like when you're young and angry, you have to shout because steam's coming out your ears and you're venting your anger and all the rest of it. And so I wrote the lyrics, which were very poetical. And after a couple of recordings, I realized people can't hear what I'm saying. And I've spent ages getting these lyrics just so. And then I've destroyed them by doing death metal vocals all over them, and it's like painting a wonderful masterpiece and then shitting on it afterwards. You sort of think, well, why did I bother in the first place? And so I thought, okay, I've written some quite emotional lyrics now, and I want people to hear them, so I'm going to sing them with clarity. And again, that was a great nerve-wracking moment because I'd never done that before either, but I just went for it. I just said, look, you've got to remember there are some people out there who are not such great singers, but wonderful vocalists. And I always highlight people like perhaps Mick Jagger and Bob Dylan. They're not the greatest, Leonard Cohen as well, not the greatest singers in the world, but sublime vocalists.
Yeah.
Because they have something to say and they say it with great passion. And that's how I thought about it. And I thought, you don't have to hit all the right notes. If you've got something to say, if you say it well, it doesn't matter. And so I said it, and it seemed to have come out quite well. Even now, I was learning new ways of singing, and I'd like to expand my range. But I think the physicality of your throat and the way you're built will always keep you within certain boundaries, which you can never really get out of. And I think I don't think I've reached my entire range yet. I'm still pushing for a bit more. But that's not important. If you can deliver sincerity in the words that you've written, it doesn't really matter how pitch perfect you are.
Sorry, just bear with me 1 second. I don't know why she's decided she's going to bark. Just bear with me 1 second. Bailey, what is it? I've got a little staffy who anything that where she doesn't immediately know that it's a friend of mine is instant target for termination.
Right.
So she's like the sweetest, most spoiled dog. But if it's not one of Daddy's friends, death.
Nice one.
But yeah, so get kind of following on from what you said there. Were you nervous the first time that you sang? I mean, I would assume you did it in the band room. What was the guys' response like when you kind of opened your mouth and the instead of a growl, they heard this? I mean, just deeply soulful voice, which you've had on pretty much since I've known the band.
Well, the death metal vocals were done with me facing a wall so that I didn't see their immediate reaction, because that immediate reaction can affect you forever. So I faced a wall, and it was so hot in that room as well. I'd actually pulled my T-shirt up over my head like a nun, but then pulled it back down over my eyes. So even though I was facing the wall, I couldn't, it was just like, right, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it how I want to do it. And I death metaled the fuck out of this song. And we finished the song, and I took it off, and I said, was that all right? And I was like, that fucking brilliant. And it was the same with the clean vocals. I was nervous as hell, even though I've known these guys for some time now. We spent a lot of time together. And it was the same thing. I wrote the lyrics, I pinned them to the wall, and I read them from the wall while the band played behind me. And I finished, I said, how was that? And they were like, brilliant. So it was good. And I would have, even if they'd said, oh, it's a bit ropey, I'd have said, well, fuck off anyway, because that's how it's staying.
That's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Have you got an album or a track that stands out to you as kind of one of your favorite vocal performances that you recorded?
Oh God, me and Andrew were listing our songs the other day for some technical musicians union thing, and I think we were up to, is it 220 songs? So that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
The Dreadful Hours was always a good one for me, because it had death metal vocals in, almost black metal vocals, whispering. It had quite a broad range of vocal attack. So that one was always a nice one to do. The Cry of Mankind was, again, it was a different delivery. It was almost narration. And so the microphone actually cranked right up for that. It really annoys our sound engineer when we play live, because there's some songs where I'm whispering and then go immediately into hellish vocals, and he's pushing the faders up and down so I don't blow the microphone up. But yeah, I mean, Turn Loose the Swans, again, there's some lovely clean vocals towards the latter part of Turn Loose the Swans, in amongst all these doom death metal vocals. And then there's some pretty songs where it's clean vocals all the way through. For My Fallen Angel, songs like that. The second Sear Me. I think it was the second, or was the third? The third Sear, I can't remember. I don't listen to much of our old stuff. And I don't need to unless we're planning a live performance. They're like my children, it's difficult to pick a favorite, because each one has a different circumstance around the time I wrote it and when I recorded it. So you might see one and think, I understand the vocal performance on this song is not my strongest. However, I absolutely loved it, because I was in the right zone at the right time in my life. And that song means more to me than something where I absolutely nailed it, but there wasn't a lot going on.
Yeah. And then again, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but I totally agree with you that division between technically brilliant and hitting the right emotional notes. I think there is a distinction between the two. I mean, for what it's worth, for me, the vocal performance that I love most of yours is on A Sea to Suffer In. I think the break where you sing "I'll Suffer in Your Sea" is just, it gives me goosebumps every single time I hear it.
I appreciate that. That's great. I mean, and even getting back to certain vocalists, I've seen Nick Cave a few times live. I've got all of his records. And again, he's a guy who writes amazing lyrics. And sometimes, he's not exactly pitch perfect, but no one cares. When I saw him do a solo gig, it's just him and the piano, and he's all over it, and he's hunched, and his head's back, and then he's hunched, and he's weeping, and it's mesmerizing. No one gives a shit if he doesn't sing the notes bang on, because look at what's happening. It was astonishing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've actually always, with Nick Cave, I've always found that he is, for me, especially live, he's better unplugged, acoustic, or just with the piano. Like that raw emotion in his voice comes out so much better when he doesn't have the band. And it's not a bad thing that when he has the band, but when he doesn't have the band, it's there's just something extra that comes out, something just completely magical, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I liked completely the opposite as well. When him and Warren formed Grinderman, and we saw them live a couple of times, it was just a bunch of old men in suits screaming their nuts off and going. It was like the early punk.
Yeah,
there was wires all over the stage. Nothing was in tune, and they were just visceral with their performance. And it was like, this is fucking amazing. And they were red in the face, yelling and fucking screaming, and it was mayhem, but absolutely brilliant.
And that had that real kind of birthday party feel to it as well, Grinderman. I mean, I agree with you. It's a shame they've not continued that project because I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, brilliant.
Adjacent to that, and there's not, not for any other reason than, probably I listen to a lot of different types of music, but I always feel like I need to be able to connect emotionally to something in a song or with a band to like it. But connected to Nick Cave, PJ Harvey, her voice, I recently listened to the demos that they released for Songs of the City, Songs of the Sea, and good God, there's a song that she does called A Beautiful Feeling. When you listen to the demo where it's just her recording, there's very little production to it. I would challenge anybody to show me a single woman or man in popular, more accessible music that has a voice that comes anywhere close to that. It is fucking phenomenal.
I'm just going to make a little note of that. What was it again?
So the track is called A Beautiful Feeling.
Right.
You can listen to it. There's two versions of it. There's the demo version, which is incredible. Then there's the version on the actual album. She does that with Tom York of Radiohead.
Oh,
it's just, for me, it's a phenomenal song. I've seen her do it live as well, and it's mind-blowingly good.
Nice one.
But in terms of her voice, fantastic. Another band with a very distinct voice, Depeche Mode, and I know you just did the It Doesn't Matter 2 cover. How did that happen, and what was it like recording something in that scenario?
That was it. It came from a guy called Libra, who I'd worked with a few years ago now. He was signed to Sony in Brazil, and he approached me maybe 10 years ago, I guess, to do some guest vocals on one of his songs, and it was great, and that was the last I heard of it. And then he'd moved up to LA and left the music business, but then decided he wanted to reconnect. And he knew I was a big Depeche Mode fan. I used to be in the fan club back when I was a younger person. Yeah. Which was funny because we used to go to this rock club called the Frog and Toad in Bradford, which is where Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride, all these bands met up, and it was great. I was the only person there with a Depeche Mode t-shirt on, which was funny. But anyway, so I've always liked them. In fact, My Dying Bride used a piece of Depeche Mode music as one of our intros once. And so Libra finally got in touch and said, do you fancy covering one of Martin's songs? It Doesn't Matter too. I love Martin Gore's work as well. I said, yeah, let's do it. It'd be brilliant. And, 'cause I've got nothing else to do. And he wanted to get back into the music business, and he's made all his contacts over the years, and he got everybody together to agree to do this song for I can't remember which charity it is. It's a sort of suicide prevention charity.
I think so, yeah.
Something along those lines. And everyone recorded it at home. I recorded it here in this room, and then you to sing a Depeche Mode song is great because I only normally do it in the shower. So to be able to get the opportunity to sing it as well, for real, was great, and again, Libra he could have played all the instruments himself. He's a multi-talented musician, and he could have done all the vocals, and it would have still sounded amazing. But he wanted his friends and his colleagues to help out, and we all did, and it's a proper international event. And it's done wonders. I think it's raising some good money for a good charity, and we're kind of hoping for some Depeche Mode feedback at some point. I don't think there is any quite yet, but it would be great if Martin would just give a thumbs up if possible. But I loved it. It's a great song. It's quite an emotional song, and I think the production that Libra's done is amazing. Everyone's done a grand job, and I think it sounds astonishing.
Yeah. It's funny to me with Depeche Mode because I, by the way, I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan as well. I'd say Depeche Mode was the first band I can recall getting into myself. I remember very distinctly when I was 5 years old, I was sitting in a room and there was a bunch of bullshit music videos on TV. My dad and my cousins who were older than I were sitting there watching it, and this band came on and they did Shake the Disease, and I remember my dad and my cousins thinking it's terrible, and 5-year-old me was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever heard in my life. And I remember singing it to myself for about 3-4 weeks nonstop so that I wouldn't forget the melody. And I've been a fan of theirs ever since. But what's interesting to me with Depeche Mode is they seem to get an exemption from all metal folk as far as coolness is concerned, because you can go to a Depeche Mode show and see people with fucking Deicide t-shirts on. And likewise, you'll go to the grimmest of grim black metal show and there'll be somebody with a Violator t-shirt on, or there'll be someone with a Depeche Mode t-shirt on. I mean, I interviewed Alex from Ruins of Beverast and he had a Violator t-shirt on, which I obviously had to ask him about. It's so curious to me as to how what they've done right to kind of get that crossover into the metal scene. And I sometimes wonder whether they're even aware of it.
Yeah, it's funny that because they certainly were in the very early days, just electro pop.
Yeah.
And that's all they wanted to be. But they always had, in virtually all their songs, if memory serves me right, they were always a bit edgy and a little bit dark. Do you know what I mean? They weren't singing happy pop songs. They were pop songs, but they weren't particularly happy. And people would dance to them, sort of looking a little bit weary. Should we be smiling while we're dancing? I'm not sure. Yeah. And they got more and more bleak, I think. And I was aware of that as I was a kid. And it was when Violator showed up. And the videos of Dave wandering along the hills, dragging a deck chair and wearing a crown.
That's a lawn chair.
And you look at it and you think it's such a bleak song. It's a bleak video, and I suddenly thought I'm into them now. I tentatively kept an eye on them, and when Violator arrived, that was it. Boom! I fucking love this band now. And yeah, a lot of people like that. I think it's because they've got that don't give a fuck attitude, and we're going to write miserable songs, and we like writing miserable songs. Tons of rock fans like miserable songs. It just seems to work. You're right. You'll see loads of metalers at Depeche Mode gigs.
Oh yeah,
vice versa.
Yeah. And again, it's kind of like Prodigy. No one in the metal scene dare speak ill of them because there'll be 5 other people telling them to shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
but
you're right. Yeah.
I agree with you on Depeche Mode as well. There was always something that was a little dark about everything that they wrote. Even their biggest hits. So a song like "Never Let Me Down." I mean, that's about David's drug addiction.
Yeah.
And when you listen to the song through the prism of that, you kind of go, well, one, the lyrics are so beautifully written and so poetic, and the performance of it is so soulful. I mean, you would never see something like that in pop music today.
No, and
you also wonder why, how on earth did they become as popular as they became? Because there's so many of their most popular tracks, like Stripped, Behind the Wheel, even Enjoy the Silence. They're not happy songs. They're not songs that are kind of, meant to get you like, smiling and bobbing about.
No, they made it big quite early. I remember seeing a video of theirs. They were playing the Rose Bowl in one of the big American cities, and it was massive. It was packed.
I think 101 actually was recorded at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena.
Oh, right.
Apologies for the interruption, but I think that's the case.
And so people just loved what they were doing, despite the dark edge that was with all of their songs. And it's great. We saw Rammstein about 10 years ago, and they did Stripped. And it was just to hear them playing it with the fire and the mayhem in this really great arena. It was just like everyone's loving this song by Depeche Mode being performed by a metal band. It seems to work perfect. I'm surprised there aren't more Depeche Mode covers on metal albums.
Yeah, ditto. And I will say to you, if ever you were going to do a Depeche Mode cover, a very stripped down version of you doing Shake the Disease would be fucking phenomenal, because your voice would suit it so well. Like, I don't know whether you've heard, it's kind of like It Doesn't Matter Too, when Martin does, or when they do it live nowadays, which is not often, but when they do it live, they do Martin just has the piano and he sings. I mean, one, it again lends like a degree of magic to the song that's just incredible. But I have always thought that you would be so phenomenally well suited to Shake the Disease.
Well, we're not averse to doing a couple of cover versions. We've done a few in the past. There's no reason why we can't do any in the future. So I will bear that in mind.
So I wanted to ask you because I think so. One thing to say to you, I think, about your daughter. I have a daughter who I think is roughly the same age as yours. She's actually going to turn 7 in May. I remember reading, when you put out the statement about your daughter falling ill and just welling up, and I feel like ever since I've become a father, my degree of empathy with kids, it's just changed so significantly. I remember watching The Exorcist when Meadow was 2, and I hadn't seen it for about 2-3 years. I hadn't seen it since she'd been born, and just the experience of watching it was just so different. Like, it really hits you. And then when I read that about your daughter, it just I couldn't imagine how it felt for you. And I think it hit me especially hard because of the degree to which My Dying Bride has always been such a has been such a comfort to me in so many really, really difficult spots in my life. And it's not something I want to dwell on. I wanted to tell you that, but equally I wanted to just how is she doing now? Is she all right? Are you guys okay?
Yeah, she's a lot better than she was, that's for sure. It's funny, because the medication they use is like 50 years old, but it works well. Well, I say it works well. It's chemotherapy. Some of the chemotherapy drugs are poison.
Yeah.
And when they arrive, there are warning labels all over these drugs. It's you have to sign an agreement to allow this to be put into your daughter because this is fucking terrifying. But it's not as terrifying as what's inside it. So
yeah.
You get all this information. You're thinking, Jesus Christ, what is in this stuff? And it's horrendous. Hence the hair loss, and you just they kind of waste away a little bit. But it's that or death. So you go through it all, and it takes a long time. It just batters you around endlessly, and you're always asking why us? Why is it happening to us? And she was 5 when she was diagnosed with cancer, and it was just like, what the fuck? How is that even a thing? Because some people think, cancer is somehow, I don't know, it's somehow manufactured. It's in plastics, and so when you microwave something, a tiny amount of oil from that plastic will seep into your food, and if you devour enough of this, you'll develop cancer, or it comes from nicotine or whatever. How can a kid have it when it hasn't done any of that stuff?
Yeah.
So that all runs through your mind, and it feels, I couldn't sleep for months because it's like your brain is constantly trying to work out a really technical mathematical sum. And so every day your brain is constantly working, how does this happen? How do I get that to happen? How does this happen? Why this? Why that? And it never shuts up. So trying to sleep at night isn't an option.
Yeah.
You just collapse with exhaustion, and that's the only time you get sleep. And you would spend the night in the hospital in the bed next to her, but there's machines beeping constantly, and the nurses would be around every 2 hours to do observational checks. So they wake you up every 2 hours. Not that you were asleep anyway. There were times when I sat and I watched all 3 Lord of the Rings films all the way through the night because I thought there's no point sleeping. I can't sleep. But the knock-on effect, of course, is the next night, if you're lucky enough, you're out like a light for a couple of hours. You only ever get a couple of hours, but that's all you need. There's more things to worry about. And it knocks you for 6, and it is as bad as you think it is, and worse in some cases, because it doesn't. When cancer shows up, it isn't just the cancer. It affects it gave her a blood clot in her heart, and there are additional things that come along for the ride, and you just think, as if the cancer isn't enough. She's now got this. She's now got this. She's now developed this. What the fuck is going on? And you think it's all falling apart, and Jesus, it feels like it. And slowly and achingly slowly, it starts to ease, and you start to get positive news, and you see some development, but it's so slow, and it puts you in such a weird plane of existence. Everything feels like deja vu. Nothing feels, you could step into a road in front of traffic because you don't give a shit anymore. You just think,
just don't care about anything anymore. It's horrible. And because the only thing that makes it almost tolerable is the fact that when you're in the child's ward, there are other children there the same. And so if it was you and only you in the whole hospital with this, you'd never live through it. But because there's only 4 beds in this ward, but all the kids are the same.
Yeah.
And in the ward next door, all the kids are the same. And you can talk to parents and share it. You know, you have to offload this angst and this pain, and they're doing the same. And you realize, shit, I'm not the only person here. We're all in the same boat, and we can help each other here. And the charity Candlelighters, who really helped out a lot. You know, I sell all sorts of My Dying Bride paraphernalia now to raise money for Candlelighters, and I gave them a shout out on our album. You know, they're really there to help out, and they're helping all the children in the ward, and they do a marvelous job. And we're still working with them now. You know, I joined this dad's group, Candlelighters dad's group, of all who are post-treatment or are still on treatment. And we meet every now and again when we can. Sometimes we have to do it on Zoom at the moment. And you share the stories, and it really helps. Because if you bottle it all up in here, you'll just go insane. You know, you'll grow old and die within 10 years. You'll just become a shriveled husk. So by sharing it, it just makes it easier to deal with. And being in the dad's group is a tremendous way of doing that. And we're lucky at the moment in the group, there's only 2 fathers whose children are still on treatment. So we're all over there sending them gifts and doing what we can and trying to be there for them. And that's important, because what I found very strange is when I told everyone that my daughter had cancer, those in my immediate sort of group, you know, I didn't announce it publicly, but I had to tell some people. They, for some weird reason, they went quiet, you know, and I never heard anything back from them during the whole process. And it was only later people said, well, it's because they don't know what to say. It's such a traumatic thing. They don't know how to. And I'm thinking, that's bullshit. I needed them. Mm-hmm. I needed people when I was at my lowest ebb. You know, when anyone is at their very, very lowest ebb, that's when you need friends and family. Family were always there, of course. But some friends disappeared into the shadows. And I thought, where the fuck are you when I need you most? And I've not spoken to them since. And they're sort of, oh, what's wrong? Why aren't you speaking to me? And I was like, fuck off. Why aren't I speaking to you anymore? I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You know, you ignored me when I needed you most. So you can fuck off now.
And it's never a case of not knowing what to say. It's a case of just being. It's not about what, you know. I guess a judgment on what you're saying. It's a judgment on you being present and being available. And sometimes you just need somebody that you can talk to, who's not going to try and provide you with a solution. They're just going to provide you with a willing ear.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had enough people supplying us with solutions, but sometimes you just need a conversation that isn't revolving around medicine, and you need that with your friends, because family come to the hospital, and that's just blood. But it's the friends, you need them. You really need them, and you need them to take you away for an hour just to talk about music, films, the weather. To get you out of the environment of the hospital thing, and most of them fucking disappeared. Wow. So now I'm in this fathers group, and we've got 2 fathers whose children are still under treatment. I send them messages every couple of days. I don't badger them, but I just send them messages. I'm not after an update. I don't need to know how your daughter is today. How are you today?
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do? Can I drop a pizza by? Just anything like that. That's what the support group is all about, because I didn't have it. My friends let me down. Not all of them, but some of them did.
Yeah. And again, I think, any sort of situation that you're in like that is going to test the bonds of friendship that you have, as much as it's going to test, probably every other relationship. And, I know you're a fan of biblical references, the reference out of the Bible's the purifying fire. And I think, what you're left with, hopefully, is, solid gold and people that that you can always rely on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And getting back to the very beginning part of your question, my daughter's doing very well at the moment. We still go to hospital every 3 months for scans to make sure there's no mass growing anywhere. But hair's all grown back, and she's not as fit as she used to be, or as fit as some of the other children, because, again, as if chemotherapy wasn't bad enough, she had to endure 3 weeks of radiotherapy every single day.
Yeah.
And that can weaken the bones. So she can't do certain sporting events because she can't run properly. And she lost half a liver. She's lost a kidney. She doesn't have a gallbladder. She doesn't have a spleen. She's lost some of her pancreas. So she's had 2 massive operations. She's got a huge scar from her neck to her belly button, and then one going across the other way as well. So she can't do contact sports because, when you remove all this stuff, everything else that's left in there jiggles about a lot more because it's got nothing to rush up against. And I suppose one good thing about it is, of course, we've told her, you can't drink beer. When you get older, you can't drink beer because you've only got 1 kidney now.
Yeah.
And your liver took a beating as well. Because what happens, the cancer was a mass to begin with and was identified when she felt the pain. We took her to the hospital. They scanned it. Fuck me, what's this? And it's just unfortunate. A few days before they were due to operate, they could have cut her open, pulled the whole thing out. Brilliant. It exploded. Which meant it spread its disgusting mess all over her internal organs, which is why she lost so many. Because when they opened her up, they were like, what the fuck's happened here? It's like someone's dropped a jar of sauce on the floor and it's just gone, pfft. How do we clean this up? So they cut out what they can see and they kind of hoover up other bits, but they can't see the microscopic bits. So that's where the radiotherapy comes in and just bombards the shit out of that. So she's left with all these side effects, and she needs to take certain tablets every day for the rest of her life. But she survived it, she's back at school, and she's loving being back at school. And I taught her how to ride a bike recently, and she absolutely loves it. So we're out on our bikes every day now, which is a pain in the ass because my back's giving me some right jip.
That, by the way, yoga. I've been a weightlifter and I've done all sorts of stuff for most of my life. And I was talking to Sam Bean from Werewolves and Antichrist Imperium a little while ago, and with the intention of teasing him about the fact that he does yoga. And then he convinced me. I gave it a try, and it is life changing. So if you've got problems with your back, just look up any kind of there's a couple of beginners sessions on YouTube that you can look up. Try them. For somebody who's is stuck in their ways on certain things as I am, to be telling you this is a big deal.
Okay, cool. I'll do that.
But last question about your daughter. Do you think that she understands the gravity of what she overcame?
No, she was too young. She was 5 when she was diagnosed and moving on towards being 6. And she had the first operation when she was 5, just before her 6th birthday. She had a second operation when she was 6, just a couple of months later. And she remembers little bits, because I am with the Candlelighters group. I show her photographs of some of the other children, and she remembers the bald head, and everyone has a feeding tube up their nose because chemotherapy, it really crushes your appetite. The kids don't want to eat, and they throw up anything they eat anyway. It's why you always see them with a tube up their nose, because that goes round to a backpack of a special fluid, which is what's keeping them alive. And I used to have to make this 3 times a day and put certain drugs in it all. Anyway, so I would say, oh, this is Thingy's child, and she's doing really well today. And she would look and she'd say, oh yeah, British. So she knows about it all, but she doesn't remember. I mean, she was doped off her eyes on all kinds of drugs, so she's not. Nobody would. But she was young, so she's 9 now. So it was years ago now, but it doesn't feel like years ago. It feels like last year because it's such a massive thing. And we still, we still got the wheelchair in the garage, which we need to return because again the radiotherapy really screwed with her legs and she couldn't walk for a while. And we've still got the wig that we got from the Little Princess Trust. And we need to give that wig back as well. So there are reminders around the house. And of course, what they give you is these, what they call beads of courage. And you get a different colored bead. But every time you have a medical procedure or you visit hospital, you get a bead, and whatever color it is, reference to what you've had done today, an injection, blood, all sorts of stuff. And hers is stretched round our house with all these beads. Every procedure she had was recorded on this really long piece of string now. We've kept that. And that's, again, a reminder. And when you look at it, you just think, there must be 500 beads here. That's every single needle that went in. And it's awful to look at, but also amazing to look at.
Well, there is a degree of triumph to it, and it's triumph of the human spirit, which I think, for whatever physical after effects that she lives with, I think anything that she faces in life, she's probably more equipped than most to deal with now because of what she went through and because of what she was able to overcome.
Yeah, we definitely think so. That, and she's kind of a bit of a hero at school, because no one at school had ever dealt with cancer before. And so, there were 1 or 2 days, even when she was on treatment, she wanted to go to school, and we'd wheel her in. And she went in first with the wig on, and everyone's like, oh, an A's back, an A's back. They can see something's wrong with her face because she hasn't got any eyebrows. But the wig got so hot, after 5 minutes, she just took it off. And at first the kids are like, oh, then they didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And they just carried on. And so it became a bit of a big thing. And they had a fundraising day for candlelighters at school, and it was in the local papers, and it became quite a bit of a thing. So she's quite famous at school, and we told her, you've battled one of the worst diseases ever, and you beat it. So if ever a bully comes up to you at school, if everyone's telling you not to, fucking punch him right in the face, knock the fucker out. And that'll, I know it's wrong, but never.
The headline's going to read, Aaron Stainthorpe encourages violence at school.
Yeah, you beat cancer. Don't let some twat at school push you around. Just kick him in the fucking teeth.
Yeah. Like I said, I apologize for earlier. I'm not somebody who gets emotional like that very easy, but I definitely will say the one thing that has changed with me since my daughter came into my life, like the watching certain things or hearing certain things, hearing about anything that affects children, especially girls, I think because of the degree to which I can relate, I think you'd probably be the same. Your mindset around it and how you process it changes completely. I mentioned The Exorcist. Yeah. I just watched that documentary on, I think it's called Falling in Love with a Killer, which is, it's kind of the Ted Bundy case, but through the eyes of the family of the girls and stuff that he killed. And again, there was a couple of things about the documentary I thought weren't very good, but I was still left shook by it afterwards because it becomes so real, but at the same time, you can also envision yourself in the position of those parents and realize just how terrifying it is to a far greater degree than I could have 8 years ago.
Oh, yeah, I'm completely the same. I can't do infant peril in movies or anything like that anymore. And even, you don't know something's coming. What did I watch the other day? I think it's Arrival. Is it Arrival? With these very tall UFOs.
Oh, yeah, it's Arrival.
And in it, of course, the woman's daughter dies of cancer. And I was all in tears, and I'm thinking, I just wanted an alien film. An alien film, and there's this poor kid who dies of cancer. And I thought,
you said, that's it. I'm never watching anything other than the first 2 Alien movies ever again.
Yeah, you see it on telly. We've just recently here on Friday we have what we call Red Nose Day, and it's raising money through laughing, and you see all these worthy causes, and if it's for kids, you feel it much more in your heart than if it's for adults. There's a lot of adults in need, that's fine, but when it's a child in need, particularly when it's cancer, it breaks our heart. We have to turn it off, even though we're associated with it and we try and help the charities. It's difficult to watch because it affects us, because we're so close to it.
Yeah,
it's a punch in the gut. It really is. And I can't do infant peril.
No, definitely not. And you mentioned Lord of the Rings. One thing that I've got my daughter into is Lord of the Rings. So it's one of the things we watch together an awful lot. On that note, have you seen the Lord of the Rings 4K remaster yet?
No, I've not seen that.
Well worth doing. If anything is going to convince you to get hold of a if you don't have one yet, but a decent 4K TV and a 4K Blu-ray player, it is mind blowing. Even the Hobbit remasters are very good as well, but the Lord of the Rings in particular is excellent. And the best thing about it is they've done it with the extended versions, because I feel like with the theatrical versions they cut out way too much.
Oh yeah.
Of the good stuff. I mean, they cut out the Saruman's death, which I just find insane in the theatrical version of Return of the King. So he just kind of disappears.
Yeah,
you never know what happens to him unless you've seen the extended version.
Yeah, we've got all the extended versions. They're looking at me on the bookcase over there, because when they came out as well, they came out in a really great box. With, Minas Tirith is in it, and there's a Gollum and some other. I bought all that, so loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. So one last question, and we'll talk about something a bit more positive. I know you're a bit of a wine connoisseur as well. So are we to expect at some point a My Dying Bride red wine turning up?
Yes.
Is it in the offing already?
No, but it is coming. It's just
as soon as the grapes come in the backyard.
Well, it's a bit like that, funnily, because again, I don't want to do just a rebranding. I don't want to go to a promotional company and say, can you put our sticker on whatever wine you've got? And it's suddenly a My Dying Bride wine. That's not a My Dying Bride wine. And I want to do like I did with the beer. I want to go somewhere and taste what they've got and see if we can create something brand new. So I want to go to some vineyards. We can't do it because of the pandemic. So when the pandemic's over, I'm going to contact a number of vineyards. I'm going to start British. British wines, they're frowned upon all over the place. But I've heard recently some of those along the south coast of England, where the weather's a lot better than up here in Yorkshire, they're getting some really good wines now. So I want to go down there and I want to taste the wine, speak to the people and ask them if there's any way, how can we make a My Dying Bride wine? I don't know how it works, but can you throw a couple of different ingredients in to give it a different flavor? And then I want to develop the taste, and I want to work with these people and produce a proper My Dying Bride wine, not a wine that someone else has done with a My Dying Bride label on.
With just a different sticker on, yeah.
Yeah, and it was funny because we were laughing about this when I first mentioned it, because we in November, our last record was Macabre Cabaret. So, of course, we're thinking, oh, Macabre Cabernet.
I was just about to
Here
say
we go.
Macabre Cabernet.
So that's coming, but we have to wait till I can visit some vineyards first, which will be a terrible ordeal, I can assure you.
I know, a real hardship. Were you always? How did you kind of develop your relationship with red wine? Because for me, it took me until I was about 25 years old to be able to stomach it, and then as soon as I could stomach it, I genuinely started to love it. I remember watching a movie, or being in the cinema watching a film called Sideways, and there's a whole big thing in there about how to drink red wine and how to kind of inhale the smells first and what to taste for and all that sort of shit. And there was a fire drill halfway through the film. We went outside, and then instead of going back in, I said, I just want to go to the restaurant next door and order a bottle of red wine, and I'm going to try it exactly the way the actor has described it. Did that, and ever since then I've been hooked. But it definitely took me a while.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I grew up in Germany because my father was in the army, and we quite liked a mild to sweet German Riesling. And we would quite often we'd go out for a meal in Germany, and even as children we were allowed a small amount of wine, and it was a sweet white thing, and that was fine, And my mother and father would drink red wine, and we had a little taste. It was fucking horrible. We'd stick with the white, but your palate obviously changes as you grow older, and I can't remember the first time I tried red and decided actually that's a good one, because when you have one and it's horrible, you assume they're all horrible then.
Yeah.
Which obviously isn't the case, and so you've got to try a few more. I was very similar with olives. I always hated olives. Then at some point in my life, I just thought I might just try one again to see if I still don't like them. Beautiful. Now I love olives and I love red wine. Two things I hated 20 years ago, now I love them. And they go hand in hand as well, funnily enough.
Yeah. For me, it was sideways, and then I also went. I was taken on a wine tasting, and as soon as I experienced that, and drank decent red wine, and had the one I went to was in South Africa, so you had the cheeses and stuff to pair up with it, which was absolutely phenomenal. I was just hooked. What is your palate like right now? Because I may make a first ever red wine recommendation on Into the Necrosphere. You have a particular kind of flavor profile that you like now, or that that you tend to sort of look out for when you're shopping?
No, I don't think I've ever bought the same bottle of wine twice, even as good as they are, because there's so many to choose from. When I have a really good bottle, I just think, oh, that's great. There's got to be more of that out there. I rarely buy another one of the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the last ones I had, I've still got the bottle because I like the label. Was a Romanian one. It's got the big cheesy Dracula label on, and
that's cool.
All the rest of it.
I think you posted about that on Instagram as well.
Yeah. And it was delicious, but I don't want to buy another one because there's more out there to explore, and I want to explore as many as I can. And plus, sometimes when they'll make that, and it'll be for a limited run, because next year's grapes will have grown differently, and it will be slightly different, and they won't be able to reproduce the exact same flavor again.
Yeah.
An Argentinian Merlot is always going to be quite high on my list of what I look for. But it's funny, because when I talk to the Aussies, they're like, oh, Australian wine, you want to get in there, mate? And, the South Africans are doing the same, and the Californians are doing the same, and rightly so. I've just been talking about how English wines are starting to make a little bit of a name for themselves. I haven't tried one yet. So I will, in fact, after this, I am going to try an English wine. We've got a great, in our tiny little village here, we've got a great wine importer who also imports beers from around the world. I'm never out of the shop. And so I'm going to go down and I'm going to ask him, what English wine have you got? And if he hasn't got any, I'm going to ask him to get some English wine in, and we're going to give that a whirl.
Yeah. The wine I was going to recommend to you, and I am going to play to a stereotype here and recommend a South African wine.
Ready.
But it's the flagship wine for an estate called Cavalli, and it is called Warhorse.
Okay.
It's a red wine called Warhorse. I'll ping over the link to you. My girlfriend bought me about 4 bottles from a place called Hard to Find Wines out of Shropshire. And they've got a bunch of very cool stuff on there. I just had a quick gander at it now, but I couldn't see that they had any more bottles in. They have the Cavalli Rosé, which I don't like rosé, but actually that particular rosé is very good. But if you can get hold of a couple of bottles of Warhorse, unbelievable.
I'll check it out.
I like a wine that's quite smoky and that's quite oaky, and has real serious flavor to it, and that to me is fantastic. I'm hooked right now on one from Spain, a Rioja from Spain that I buy at Costco of all places. But very, very, very good.
It's hard. It's hard. I've rarely found a crap one. You get some that you sort of think, okay, it's drinkable, will help it along with a bit of cheese and some olives, but I'll not buy it again. But I've rarely had one where it's like, oh Jesus, that's undrinkable. Maybe
I had a Chilean wine about a year ago that was like that, where I had half a glass and I was like, fuck this, I can't drink the rest of this crap. It's absolutely awful.
An English wine.
No, I don't actually know how much English wine I've had. Generally, I'll buy Californian. I just had something recently called Beartooth, which was another Costco purchase, and really, really good, very good.
Yeah, the Romanian one there was a real surprise, because I try and do different countries as well, and I've had Romanian wine in Romania when we've played there. It's great. As I said, to find it in the local shop was quite a surprise, and when I popped it and tried it, it was like, yeah, these guys, why is it Romania? bigger in the world of winemaking than it is. You know, it's always the French and the Spanish and the Californians.
Yeah.
Where are the Romanians?
There's I know Moldovan wine is meant to be quite nice as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's not something I've got a huge amount of experience with, but I've had a fair few people suggest it to me. But I mean, for me, I eat a lot of red meat, so weekends is steak and wine. I don't think there's dry aged steak and red and punchy red wine. I don't think there's a better flavor combination on the face of the earth.
Sounds good to me.
Wrapping it up with one last question I wanted to ask you, and this is particularly in the view of the band being 30 years old. Are you surprised by how long the love for My Dying Bride has endured and continues to endure? Because as you say, like it feels like with every record, you guys gain more fans and you become you become bigger and you're introduced to newer generations of folk. But it really doesn't feel to me like My Dying Bride's light has ever really faded.
No, it's funny because the reason we left Peaceville Records after such a long and fruitful relationship with them was because we felt we'd sort of reached a plateau with Peaceville and they couldn't push us any further when we thought we still had more to give to the world, which is not arrogant. It's just, we just think that there has to be a bit more than this. There has to be something else out there. So when our contract with Peaceville was coming to an end, we started to look at other record labels, and we got a friend of ours, Andy Farrer, actually Paradise Lost and Opus and Catatonia's manager and Devon Townsend's manager, who knows a lot of stuff, lives 5 minutes away from me, which is great. We said, look, can you help us broker a deal with someone else? We haven't fallen out of love with Peaceville. We just think we've absolutely extrapolated every possible avenue, everything we possibly can. But we feel we've got more. And Andy Farrer was, yeah, all right, fine. And he looked around, and obviously, we were aware of who the movers and shakers were in the business, and we were kind of hoping Nuclear Blast would show some sort of interest. And they came back with a deal that, when Opus manager says you have to sign this, it's fucking amazing. You signed it, and you know that if a big label like Nuclear Blast can see life in My Dying Bride still, then we were right. We have got more to give, and it absolutely paid off. They never gave us a deadline. They've been super supportive. They sent loads of toys over when my daughter was sick. Never gave us a deadline for the album. They just said, "You give it to us when you're ready." Brilliant. And we've seen, just from the interview schedule, when you release an album, we're doing way more interviews than we did on Peaceville. We've seen advertisements for our album in places Peaceville never advertised. And, our album charted in so many countries, which, was charted before, but not to these high levels. It's, you sort of start to think, wow, this is amazing. Perhaps despite after 30 years, people still find some relevance in My Dying Bride. There's still something there that the people like, and we certainly still like it, because we could have stayed on Peaceville forever. They gave us as much artistic freedom as anybody could possibly ask for. And we could have just continued to trudge and release album after album after album, but it felt like we were stuck in deep mud and we wanted to get out, and life was better somewhere else. Despite Peaceville treating us brilliantly. And it was the right decision. It was the right move to make. Nuclear Blast have been amazing, and they've opened our eyes to more possibilities. I don't think we would have done the beer if we're on Peaceville. I don't think we would have done the wine. We just feel invigorated. We feel like a young band again. Do you know what I mean? It's like suddenly all these people are paying interest. And despite being around for years, we now see on social media, people from other big bands are saying, oh, who's this My Dying Bride band? Their new album's brilliant. It's like, we've been around 30 years. How have you never heard of us before?
Yeah.
So it was the right decision to make. And it seems like we're a popular band again after 30 years, which is a lovely feeling,
Yeah. Well, look, I want to say thank you once again for your time. I've so enjoyed our conversation. You. I think if you had told me, so I discovered My Dying Bride through an MTV Headbangers Ball interview that you guys did when Gods of the Sun was coming out. And if you had told me at the time, I would, 24 or 25 years later, however long it is, I would be interviewing you. I'd probably have done fucking backward somersaults. So I appreciate your time, and I'm so glad to hear things are going well with your daughter. And I'm really looking forward to whatever comes down the road for you as well. And also, more importantly, the Shake the Disease cover.
So. Yeah, I've made a note of that. Thank you very much. I will check that out. Much appreciated.
Great stuff. Aaron, take care of yourself.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
Cheers. See you later, everybody. Bye-bye.
thank you so very much to Aaron for coming on the show. What a great guest, what a great guy. And yes, if you watch this on YouTube in particular, you will have noticed that I got really, really choked up and emotional when we started talking about his daughter's illness. I mean, first of all, I'm so happy for him and for his family and for his daughter that she managed to get over this. But secondly, I do find that as I grow older, I have a very hard time putting a lid on my emotions when it comes to certain things, especially with kids. And the fact that he has a daughter who's as old as my daughter, the fact that his music has on so many occasions in my life been such a comfort and such an outlet for me. I just felt for him when I first read that post that he did back in 2018. And again, like I said, I'm just super happy for him that she's come out on the other side, and I continue to wish her well. You'll have heard, obviously, he referred to a charity called the Candlelighters a couple of times over the course of the conversation. I'm going to post a link to the Candlelighters in the description of the podcast as well. They're obviously a great charity that do a lot of good work for a lot of people. If you have a few ducats to spare, head over there and give them a donation, because they can sure use it, especially right now. And then also, by the way, you heard a track called A Secret Kiss off Macabre Cabaret, which is available right now on Nuclear Blast Records, as is The Ghost of Orion, which is a Briar Long player, which makes me sound like I'm from fucking 1952. Their last record, their last full-length record. So check that out. But frankly, there's so much in this band's discography that you should check out. And if for any reason you have taken your foot off the pedal as far as they're concerned, and you've let things like The Dreadful Hours or Songs of Darkness, Words of Light pass you by, then you owe it to yourself to dig into the archives, because there is some absolute magic in there. Speaking of magic, the new Shrines is out, and it is available right now on Apocalyptic Witchcraft Records. You'll see that I am proudly repping their t-shirt if you're watching this on YouTube. The EP is called Ghost Notes. It is 4 tracks. It is the follow-up to their 2015 debut. One thing that I will say about their 2015 debut is I felt that they were a band that were brimming with really, really great ideas, but they appeared to sort of lack the confidence to always execute those properly, or to execute them in, I think, the kind of the way that I would imagine that they would have wanted to. When you compare the two records, the 4 tracks on Ghost Notes, sound like the band really kind of, are standing proud behind this material. The music and the songs sound more fully formed. They sound a lot more focused. And I think that the time that Sam Loynes, who is a friend of Into the Necrosphere, also a member of Voices, the Antichrist Imperium, Akrakoka, I think the time he's spent in those bands has done his confidence as an artist the world of good, because it really comes out in his performance on this record. And frankly, I think I've said this about him on podcast episodes. I might even have said it when he was here previously. I do think Sam has got probably more talent than he even realizes or gives himself credit for. The 4 tracks on Year, to me, just is an indication of what he's capable of, when he's away from maybe those well-established musicians. And it makes me very excited for what this band have to offer in the future. You are going to see exactly what I mean right now. This is a track off of Ghost Notes. It's called Connection.
Parallel light.
That was Connection off of Ghost Notes, the new EP by Shrines, featuring Sam Loynes of Voices, Antichrist Imperium, and Acrococker, and available right now on Apocalyptic Witchcraft Records. I know I rag on about record labels an awful lot on the show, and that is not something that's going to change at any point soon. But what I will say is Apocalyptic Witchcraft are one of the good guys. They are a label that, in my opinion, really epitomize every single thing that I love about the underground scene. They put out great bands, and this is no exception. So support them. Head over to their Bandcamp, and if you do buy something, then let them know that it was old Space Mountain Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. Next up, I want to talk about a band called Blindfolded and Led to the Woods from New Zealand. They have just put out their third record. This is actually the first one that I myself have paid any attention to. And shout out to Invisible Oranges because I discovered it on there. The album is called Nightmare Withdrawals. Inexplicably, this is, they are independent. They're unsigned. Fuck knows why. I mean, I haven't really listened to their two previous records, their debut being My Vaseline Diaries, which came out in 2014. And then they also had Modern Doxography, which came out in 2017. Nightmare Withdrawals, however, if this is any indication, those two previous records are fantastic. And again, somebody at a record label somewhere is fucking half asleep because these guys are money. I will paraphrase a follower of mine on Instagram, Razor Eater Metal, who you can find at Razor Eater Metal, and he said, absolutely fucking phenomenal. Thank you for the recommendation. I'm floored by this release. It's beyond words. Perfection isn't even close to describing it. I wouldn't say it's necessarily complete perfection, but it's pretty fucking close. And I think Razor Eater Metal has nailed it in terms of, just the delivery, just everything. Yeah, basically Blindfolded and Led to the Woods make technical death metal, but rather than fuck around on their instruments and try to impress you with what amazing players they are, they do both that and show you what great songwriters they are at the same time. The way I described this on social media when I posted about it over the weekend is I said, this is a band that are technical death metal, but they prioritize songwriting over technical dexterity. That is the best way to describe them. So what you end up with is a band that sounds a little bit like a blend between Gorguts, Cephalic Carnage, and even Deathspell Omega. There's these little flourishes of black metal that comes through it as well. And every single song is tight as a fucking tight thing. And I couldn't say anything else because I'd probably be cancelled. It's super tight, super focused. The songs are entertaining, the songs are catchy, and most importantly, they're very memorable. And that, for me, when it comes to technical death metal, is a rarity. But like I said, I think these guys are the exception that show that the genre can be done right. And I'm just astounded that nobody at a record label has picked up on this, including my friends at Apocalyptic Witchcraft. So I am going to play a track off the album right now. This is a song off of Nightmare Withdrawals. It's called And You Will Try to Speak. And You Will Try to Speak by Blindfolded and Led to the Woods, off an album called Nightmare Withdrawals. It is available independently on Bandcamp. Again, I'll post a link to that record in the description of the podcast. Go check them out and show them the love that 11 years in the music industry has apparently failed to do. I mean, I don't understand how this band is unsigned, but either way, I think it's a fucking fantastic record, and I really do think that you need to check it out, even if you're not a fan of technical death metal. If they can convince a salty old dog like me, then they sure fucking convince you. Right, time now for some news. All right, so we'll start on Metal Storm, because after many months of the site not working properly, it seems like they finally got their acts together. The first headline that is catching my eye: Hypocrisy, complete work on new record. Now, I must confess, I have not really been the biggest fan of Hypocrisy's most recent work. For me, the real magic of this band, or the apex of this band's career, was the self-titled album, which I know is probably not the most popular choice, but for me, that was the record where they kind of let loose and they experimented a little bit more. I liked some of the clean vocal styles that Peter Tägtgren brought in, and I just thought, generally speaking, the songs were the songwriting was at its strongest. Later on, I felt like the band sounded really, just tired. Especially in comparison to some of the older stuff. You can't listen to Osculum Obscenum, and just how badass and aggressive the band sounded on there, and then compare it to something like Virus. And see it as a band with the same level of hunger. Whether you like Virus or not, I just think the band sounded a lot more vital when they were younger. But as they slowed down and as they tried different things, they were at their best when they were probably at their most experimental. But that being said, it says here, Swedish veterans Hypocrisy have completed work on their new studio album, the first one in 8 years, comprised of 11 tracks and 52 minutes in total. It'll land in store later this year. I don't know whether they're still signed to Nuclear Blast. I don't know what the deal is, but if you're a Hypocrisy fan, then I guess you should get ready to be happy, because they've got a new record on its way. Norgevel, Gnawing the Bones, single and lyric video unleashed. I know a lot of people are awfully excited about this, and I've not paid a huge amount of attention to Norgevel, certainly not recently, but Gnawing Their Bones is the second single from Norgevel's forthcoming Fenrir EP, and has premiered online with accompanying lyric video. The EP will be released by Indie Recordings on May 7th, 2021. Gojira, I see, debut third single and video for upcoming album. This is another one of those bands like Lamb of God where I know I'll probably end up liking the album when it comes out and I give it a listen, but it's definitely not particularly high up on my list of albums that I am excited about in 2021. There's far too many other things on the way which get my blood going more, including the new Pestilence. Now, regardless of whether Patrick Mameli is in real life a complete and utter penis, the one fact that is very true about him is the man is a great songwriter, an incredible guitarist, and a sick vocalist as well. So it says, on a new label and armed with a whole new lineup, Dutch experienced metal machine Pestilence now proudly announced the release of their 9th full-length offering, titled Exitum, on June 25th worldwide via Agonia Records. Agonia Records, I think, were one of the labels who were also talking to Unblessed Divine. So I'm not sure why they ended up going with Massacre, but anyway, that's a side note. Produced like all Pestilence albums by the band's mastermind Patrick Mameli, and co-produced, recorded and mixed and mastered by Yuri Hogavian. It says there are 10 tracks, 1 intro, 1 outro. The album art looks fucking badass. And I think that some of the last Pestilence records have been some of their best, quite frankly. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think that they're one of the few bands that are around from the old school that again managed to consistently bring out stuff that sounds on a par with or better than their earlier material. So excited about that. What else? See Meshuggah enter Sweet Spot Studio. We spoke about that last week. Again, always excited about new Meshuggah, especially given the tear that they have been on recently. Let's move on. And by the way, if my internet's a little bit slow and I'm some of these pages take a while to load up, it's because GigaClear, my local broadband supplier, is fucking shit, and the internet goes down here every other day. They are they're out here in the sticks. That's one thing that sucks, is that you don't especially have choice when it comes to high-speed internet. And without high-speed internet, how am I supposed to stream my pornography in 4K? So GigaClear, have let me down once again. I'm using my mobile hotspot, which sadly it won't probably stretch out to any of the houses nearby, considering the closest one is about a mile away. But back when I was living in Kingston upon Thames, on the outskirts of London, when I was living on the mean streets of Surbiton, I should say, I changed the Wi-Fi hotspot name to Lockdown Radar 741BZ hash. Specifically to freak out the pot smokers that live downstairs, in case they checked out their phones and saw it. Sepultura confirmed UK tour dates in November. Sepultura have announced a 4-date Quadra UK trek. They are now saying over here that we are going to be fined £5,000 for leaving the country up until, I think, June. Aaron and I, if memory serves me correctly, spoke about that. God knows what else they're going to do. I mean, there was one guy who's in the government who said that we shouldn't expect a summer holiday. And then obviously you get to fall and winter. And, one or two people get the sniffles, and all of a sudden they'll go, we have to cancel, what's that now? We have to cancel everything and shut down everything again because 2 or 3 people had have a cold. So that's obviously the sign of another pandemic. What I will say is I have kicked the can down the road on my 40th birthday celebrations to such a point that I'm now 41. The plan is now to be in South Africa in December. I swear to Christ, even if I have to get on a fucking refugees rubber dinghy and row my way to that country, I will do so. Cannibal Corpse new single premiered online. This is off their 15th studio record, Violence Unimagined. I listened to that. It's called Murderous Rampage, and I must admit I am not nearly as excited about the record as I was after I heard the first single. This to me just sounds like basically standard Cannibal Corpse by numbers, and it's just that kind of death metal it appeals to me in fits and starts only. Like, the reason why I like that first single is it had a really, really sick groove. There was something that just sounded a little bit different about it. On this one, I maybe it's something that'll grow on me, but it just feels like Paul Mazurkowicz's drumming is kind of all over the place. Because his drumming is all over the place, George's vocals are all over the place. I don't know. It's not really doing anything for me. Monster Magnet releasing covers album this May. Again, I know this might probably call my cult credentials into question, but I do like Monster Magnet very much. I'm generally always excited about anything new that they release. If you see me scroll up and down, by the way, it's because I've got a lamp in front of the screen, so that there's no glare or shadowing off the microphone. But anyway, covers album coming out soon. Let's move on. Body Count put out fan-created music video for The Hate Is Real. I thought the new Body Count album had 1 or 2 okay moments on it, but again, for the most part, I'm fucking sick and tired of Ice-T being treated like he is Thomas Sowell, or the be-all and end-all of the culture wars, economics, foreign policy, etc. I've always liked his hip-hop. I've always had a soft spot for Body Count, but I'm just, the way that he gets held up as fucking Professor Ice-T by a lot of the left-wing media, it drives me fucking mad. Moving on, let's see what else is going on. Yeah, Panopticon reveals second in advance track from upcoming effort. Panopticon's next full-length effort, and again Into the Light, is scheduled for May 15th official release. Before this music output lands in stores, a second in advance track has been unleashed. Moth Eaten Soul. That first one sounded pretty interesting. So hopefully the other one sounds that way too. I have not yet listened to it. I did really, really like the last Winterfilleth record, and it's good to see that atmospheric black metal enthusiasts, Winterfilleth, are located in Fold Studio in Wales with producer Chris Fielding, where they are recording string instruments for their upcoming studio album, the follow-up to last year's The Reckoning Dawn. I know that Mark Morris of Mark's Metal Minute, who's a very cool guy, and Mark's Metal Minute is a very, very cool page on Instagram that you should follow if you don't yet. I know he really, really liked The Reckoning Dawn. As a matter of fact, I think it might have been his number one album of 2020. It didn't actually feature in my top 20, and that is because it was one of those records that I only really listened to after the list had already been done. But it was very good, and glad to hear that they're back on it as quickly as they've been. And again, I wonder how many other bands are in the studio without us possibly even knowing. Because I mean, what else are you going to do at the moment? Last week we spoke about the new Mastodon, so I don't need to talk about that. There's really nothing else on Metal Storm that is capturing my attention. So let's head over to the cesspit that is the Democrat wing of rock music media, Blabbermouth. Skillet's John Cooper, why it's perfectly fine for Christians to play music and have tattoos. Play rock music and have tattoos. Now, again, I say this at the back end of the show because I know from the statistics that I see that not everybody sticks around to the very end. But I'll say this for those of you guys that do. There is a certain satirical page on Facebook that I may or may not have commandeered, and the one way in which you can drive Christians absolutely off the rails is when you say that playing rock music and having tattoos is going to send you to hell, which I would assume is exactly why Skillet's main man decided that it was time for us to be reminded of that. In as much as you can drive a Black Veil Bride fan crazy by calling Andy Beersack Andy Beerbag, again, as I may or may not have done, or say anything bad about Corey Taylor and see a Slipknot fan fucking go apoplectic. The quickest way to rile up a Christian metaler is to say that it's evil to play rock music and have tattoos, and that everybody that listens to metal takes drugs and worships Satan. Behemoth's Nurgle praises Polish government for keeping churches open for Easter. Again, like I said, I think that whole story is so tiring. Yes, I agree that the blasphemy laws are a little draconian, not a little, probably a lot draconian. But again, if I went to Dubai or I went to Turkey, I can't run around insulting the Prophet Muhammad. So surely if you're in a certain country and the laws are the laws, just because you disagree with them, doesn't mean you can just flout them however you want. It doesn't matter if it's got to do with Christianity or not. I don't agree with the law, but I do. I would imagine I'm smart enough to know that if I break the law, most likely there's going to be consequences for doing so. And I think I feel like this is a little bit this is like the blown up version of him apparently getting kicked out of the YMCA for wearing a Dark Throne T-shirt, which, as I said at the time, it sounds like the black metal version, somewhat less serious, of the Juicy Smoulier story. Like the YMCA people came in when he was doing his push-ups with his Dark Throne T-shirt on. This is Jesus country. Okay, David Ellefson says Megadeth is the greatest thrash band in the history of the world. Credits Dave Mustaine with inventing the genre. Wrong. Slayer is the greatest thrash band in the history of the world. And Dave Mustaine did not invent the genre, just as much as Dave Mustaine isn't a fucking kung fu master that can kill everybody with his bare hands, as he repeatedly tells us otherwise in his insipid load of trash autobiography. What else is going on here? Slipknot's clown on mask design process. The heaviest part of it is in your own brain. Wow, how unbelievably insightful. Tomahawk releases music video for Predators and Scavengers. Tomahawk is the band, of course, featuring Dwayne Dennison of the Jesus Lizard. More important than that, Mike Patton of Faith No More. I am a huge fan of Mike Patton, and I'm a big fan of Tomahawk, and all the tracks I've heard so far off of Tonic Mobility have been fantastic. So if you're a fan of that young man, not a young man anymore, old man, but then definitely check out that record. My favorite Mike Patton story, by no small stretch of the imagination, and I may have told this on the podcast before, but I'm going to tell it again now. Myself and my buddy Errol went to go and see Tomahawk. I think it was Errol. Anyway, I went to go see Tomahawk and the Melvins play at the London Forum, and at the Melvins played a fantastic show. Tomahawk came on, and Mike came out, and he was doing the sound check for his 2 keyboards that he's got set up either side of the microphone. And this fat fucking idiot is standing at the front of the audio, or front of the crowd, and he keeps on yelling, "Fuck me, Mike! Fuck me, Mike!" And you could see Mike was getting more and more worked up about this, and eventually he looks down at the guy and he shouts, "What?" Spits in his face, and then just casually goes on doing his sound check. And I mean, the dude looked like, frankly, I think he looked like he was going to take the spit and rub it all over his mouth. But either way, a point was made, and I thought it was fucking hysterical. And they, by the way, played a phenomenal show as well. I don't really think there's all that much else to talk about. Yeah, I saw that Guar to release acoustic EP, the disc with no name. I bet that'll be crap. But I will say that I will always have a very, very special spot for Scumdogs of the Universe. Fantastic record, and again, I've seen them live twice now, and both times they were fan-fucking-tastic. I think that's about it for the news this week, ladies and gentlemen. And if the news is done, then I am also done. Remember to check out the Shrines EP, the Blindfolded and Led to the Woods record. Thank you very much to my guest, Aaron Stainthorpe. Also, dig back into the My Dying Bride discography if you haven't done so in a while. And also remember to come back next week, because I'll be talking to Michael from Friedenstahl. Like, share, subscribe, do all of that good stuff wherever you are, whatever it is you're doing. Stay safe and healthy. From the mean streets of Great Shefford, I am wishing all of you bad motherfuckers a fond farewell.